Hey, Michelle here from Sensate Soul and the Soul Translator, and I work with sensitivity as a personal and spiritual development path, as well as for HSPs and Empaths, and what I call us empreneurs, those who are using your creative empathic talents and gifts to create a business and a life that helps you and also helps others. So in today's video, I want to touch back into something that I offered recently, an insight and idea, and a couple tips I want to add to this. The idea being around how our inner critic is the one who was the most influential critically for our beliefs and mindsets. Of course, we've all had many people who, or maybe hopefully not many people, but we all have had a handful probably of people and experiences in our lives. And of course, this is particularly from the influence of people, parents and caregivers and siblings and, partners, all of that, teachers, that have the most influence on our inner voice, our inner critic. And what I offered in that last video was this long time observation that finally it feels like download came in, and it was like, oh, that's what's going on, which was that the internal voice, that inner critic, is usually the personality or also the personality disorder of the person that has had the greatest influence on us, in the sense of negatively, in the sense of somebody who wasn't supportive of who we are. If you want to hear more about this topic, please do check out that video. So that's the part 1, and this is the part 2. And you'll see it says, the inner critic. And then for this video, I want to particularly share for HSPs and Empaths a very deep insight that I feel is what's at the heart of our inner critic and our ways that we hold ourselves back and the ways that we don't feel safe in the world. And connected to mindset, connected to that influence of who in our life helped develop our inner critical voice or inner critic. And here's what I see happen. And of course, I'm offering this as an idea. This is not, hasn't been clinically tested, even though I do have a background in clinical psych and everything. But this is from my experience over the years, and as a coach and as a counselor, working with I don't work as a counselor anymore, but as a coach for the last 14 years, and working particularly with those who have big dreams and also big self-confidence and safety worries and mindsets, particularly for those who are also, my specialty niche is with HSPs and Empaths, but I also work with others as well. But for you, Empath and HSP, my sweet people, this inner critic has got an extra layer that I want to talk about here for a sec, which is because of our sensitivity, because of our empathy, we can then, the shadow side, the deeper side of that critic's personality that we then internalize as our inner critic, which I shared in that last video, which was shocking to me when I discovered that my inner critic can be quite the narcissist. In ways that I describe that, I'm creating a new program around healing from narcissism. So that's going to be more explained in that. So, but what I want to get to here, the heart of it is that the HSPs and Empaths internalize the shadow side of that person who had the critical voice. So we internalize their shadow. How does that happen? I believe it happens because of our empathy and our sensitivity, that we feel the underneath We feel their core wound. We're in touch with that. We are in touch with and can feel physically, emotionally, energetically, psychologically, even spiritually, their fear, their negative mindsets, the thing that formed them into being that more critical, insensitive, or even personality disorder person. So we feel that. And we can internalize, this is what I believe, again, this is not proven science, but we internalize that voice. There's the critical voice, and then there's the wounded one underneath that causes the critical voice. And for a lot of empaths and HSPs, it seems, and I'm just going through the history of the people that I've worked with and, looking at this pattern, because that's one of my things, is being a pattern sleuther. And I'm seeing how, oh my gosh, that inner critic, and let me also say, I know this is true for myself. That's where it starts. That inner critic has both that voice of the critical side, the ego side, and then also the wounded side. So when I see, here's a really practical example. When I look at who formed my inner critic the most, who had the most influence, I also see that my mindsets, my limited beliefs that I took, or should I say that I adopted from that person, that I energetically felt from that person, have become my core limited beliefs. So a really practical example is the person who was the most narcissistic influence in my life never felt like he could succeed, always felt like he would fail. And honestly, that is one of my core wounds, is that feeling like I'm never going to amount to anything. In fact, this person, used to always say that to me. So that is the deep wound that I continue to work with in my life, that I keep peeling back the layers and working through. And yes, it's definitely gotten better and better and less of something I believe over the years. But I'll be honest, there's still layers that I'm working through. That's just life. So I hope you can see where those connect, because the inner critic that you have inside of you is often the personality of the person who was most critical. There's many different variations of that personality, but then the core wound and the thing that you are healing when you're doing your inner work and when you're doing your active changes in your life, to prove it otherwise, to let go of its grip on you, or the belief that you have in it because this person told you this thing about you or about life that you had no other choice at a certain point but to believe them, because they were the authority, or they were the one taking care of you, or you adopted their story or their beliefs, and also from observation you made that story fit for what you believe in life and what you believe about yourself. So that's what all this mindset work and limited belief work is about, is releasing these, basically these things that are not true about ourselves. They're lies. Or they may be true for somebody else, but they're not necessarily true for us. Certainly not when we don't believe them anymore, when we have evidence in our life that suggests otherwise, and we have all the different things that can help us heal in the sense of, different experiences and faith and love and actively doing things to have a different experience, so that those, certain mindsets are, told to left the building because they no longer, you don't need their company anymore. So I want to leave just 3 tips here for you to be able to explore this a little more if you so choose, and also to be able to work with it. So the first one is to write out and journal, or spend a little time thinking, feeling into your body, playing with some memories, or maybe you want to talk with a friend or something, or a family member, so that you can identify what is the true personality that you see in this person. or saw in them. And this is, trust yourself on this. This is not about like making things up or blaming and all that stuff. Just really objectively look and say, wow, this person, their personality was, or maybe it's very clear because they truly had, a diagnosable mental, personality disorder or some sort of something was going on, and it was very clear what this person's personality was. So first, identify. Second part is be the observer. Look and see how inside you does that person or that personality show up as your inner critic. What is the tone of the voice? What is the way they talk to you, or the inner critic talks to you? What is its expectations, and why do you feel like you can't live up to them, or all the different things. Like, just look at some basic things of like, okay, now I'm gonna just put on my observation cap and just see, sleuth it out a bit. And then the third one is to use some process like EFT, which I teach at Sensate Soul School. Use some process to be able to work with those limited beliefs and work with that personality inside of you. And EFT is really helpful because it actually lets you externalize that critical voice and normalize it when you do that. That's just one suggestion to be able to work through some of these voices of the inner critic inside of us. So, of course, there's many different ways, and, working with somebody, a coach or counselor, is also great. So there we have it, just some introduction to this idea, and I hope that you can discover the personality and the voice style and the wound of that person who has helped to influence your inner critic, so that you can get some space from it. Because the thing is that when we can't identify something, like basically a strong way to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, is like when the aggressor doesn't have a face or identity, it can create a lot of anxiety and paranoia in us because we don't know what we're dealing with. But when you do know, if you can identify it, then you are that much closer to being able to go, okay, I'm on to you. I know what you need here. I know how to deal with you. And, that can be incredibly helpful, so that we can be in our hearts and have and create lives that really are meaningful to us. All right, thanks so much for watching this video. I'd love to know what you feel about this, so please do leave a comment, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, share this with a friend as well, and come on over to sensatesoul.com and you can get more support for sensitivity, empathy, creativity, and for HSPs and empaths and empreneurs. All right, so much love. See you in the next video.